Today, we're going to go over the best settings for not only PC, but console as well. So if you'd like to, you can skip throughout the video and press pause to copy and paste the settings. If not, I am going to go over each individual setting. What does it mean and how does it affect you based on your setup? Starting with graphics, I recommend full screen exclusive so you can maximize your frames and minimize your input delay. That being said, it's a small competitive advantage. So if you do prefer borderless, you could totally run borderless. Everything here will be the same. And this is actually my first time ever being on a 4K monitor. And I learned that you should keep this on auto. And if you do want to bring down your quality down to, let's say 1080p or even 2K, you would want to do that in the quality tab and not the display tab. Scrolling down for your gamma and brightness, I do recommend bringing it up just a little bit. So if there are any people camping in corners, you can look for them. Right under brightness is NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency. I recommend having this on or on plus boost. To my understanding, if you do have a really good graphics card, but not the best CPU, you could run on plus boost. But if your CPU is better than your graphics card, you should probably just run on. Scrolling down, Echo Mode preset is custom with VSync gameplay and menu both turned off. My custom frame rate limit is set to 300 with my menu set to 60, just so our GPU is given a break here and there. Everything else is default, but there is HDR. Again, this is my first time having a 4K monitor, so messing around with these settings, I genuinely couldn't find something I enjoyed. So I personally have it set to off. In the quality tab, this is where you can play on 4K, 2K, or 1080p. Again, being a competitor, I do prefer playing on 1080p, so I have more frames that I can work with. That being said, if you're not a competitor and you just enjoy the game, you could play on 4K. And regardless, if you have an insane system that gets you more than 200 frames on 4K, you might as well play 4K. Here's the difference between me on 1080p, 2K, and 4K. Again, I prefer the FPS advantage, so I'm gonna be on 1080p. On 1080p, no HDR, I'm actually only getting about, on average, about 140 FPS. Sometimes I'm bumping up to 150, 160. And this is really weird, but playing on 2K, I'm actually getting way more consistent frames around 150 rather than being on 1080p, which 1080p, I was going literally anywhere between 130, 160, but this one for sure, I'm getting an average of 150. I am grateful to have a 4K monitor. This is absolutely beautiful, but as expected, my FPS does drop down to about 120. So I'm going from about 150, 160 down to 120. And of course, as we run around, this brings it down even more, down to seems like even 108 at moments. Upscaling and sharpening, this is where a lot of pro players just say, hey, throw on Fidelity FX Cast. It basically makes the game pop more, the colors pop more. In some games, it looks like you're playing a comic book game. It's pretty insane. But that being said, if you don't like running Fidelity FX Cast, you could run NVIDIA DLSS. The only issue with DLSS is you will run into these little ghost bubbles. That's what I call them, where you may see an enemy run behind cover, and as he runs behind cover, you see like this little like shadow or this little blur that follows him. Sometimes you can actually see this blur before the enemy even peeks out, almost feeling like you have cheats in a way. Now, this NVIDIA DLSS frame generation, it does give me about an extra 30 FPS, but that being said, I've been told that this does create an input delay on your system and it's not worth running. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep it off, but with more game time and test, we'll learn if this is a viable option or not. Another popular topic is the VRAM skill target. I've learned that if you set this number past 70, you could run into a lot of hitching issues, which is basically your game like getting little stutters and lags. So I keep mine set to 70. Variable rate shading, I do recommend this for playing maps like Warzone, but since we're playing on smaller maps, you could literally just turn this off. Again, personally, I prefer having as many frames as possible, so I literally set all of these settings to low or very low. The texture resolution, I have that set to low. Again, if you want some better quality, you could set it to normal. I would say this is the big one. I'm gonna keep it on low. As we scroll down, depth of field, definitely turn that off. Basically, every time you aim in, it blurs your screen, which If you are aiming in and everything's blurred, how are you going to see the enemy? The local texture streaming quality, I just have this set to default, but basically if you bring this down to low, whenever you load up a bigger map, you'll get more frames. That being said, though, when I do play on bigger map, I prefer having this set to default so I can see those enemies. Once again, scrolling down to Shadow and Lightning, we have low and off, 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 environment, low, off, 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 off. On to our last graphics tab, the view tab. Field of view, I recommend playing anywhere between 90 and 110. The lower it is, the bigger enemies look, but the higher it is, the smaller the enemies look, but you have a better view for your peripheral vision. For ADS field of view, the difference between affected and independent is independent. Every time you aim in, your screen zooms in and it makes the enemy even bigger. But a lot of players don't like this, especially for Warzone, because when you aim in, you still want to have your peripheral just to react to other enemies. You know, give yourself an opportunity to get back behind cover. Weapon field of view really doesn't matter that much. I prefer wide. It just makes the weapon look smaller. Then as we scroll down, the very important camera settings, make sure you have first person camera movement set to 50, weapon motion blur set to off, and world motion blur set to off. Now, a lot of players like Shotzi are running into this blue screen of death where literally you try to load up the game and your entire PC just craps. If that is the case, I recommend coming to this tweet right here by Merc Tweaks. Basically follow this step by step, and all you're literally doing is you're going to your Call of Duty file, you're going to players, and then you're deleting these 3 text documents, and then you're copying and pasting the 3 text documents in this link right here. This should give you an FPS boost and hopefully fix the crashing issues, but if that doesn't fix it, then hopefully Activision creates a fix. Now, quickly, we're gonna go over the audio settings. I do recommend bringing down your gameplay, dialogue, and cinematics volume because your effects volume is all of the footsteps and gunshots and all of that good audio you need to react and get info. As we scroll down, I do recommend playing on Treyarch Mix, Headphone Bass Boost, or Sucker Punch. It genuinely is preference at the end of the day. Everyone's ears are different. I've had people tell me that home theater is even better. Me personally, I do enjoy Treyarch Mix, but like I said, it is preference. So go ahead and try out all of these different options and see which one you like the best. Now, I am not an audio wizard, so I do lack this expertise, but there's this asymmetrical hearing compensation where you can configure the frequency intensities for each ear. Literally, you go through all of these frequencies and you can either lower them or bring them even higher. I would highly recommend search up some audio wizards on YouTube to figure out if they have any really good settings here. Other than that, me personally, I am out of my league, so I'll go ahead and keep this off, but we may look at that in a future video. Now, reduced tinnitus sound, you could turn this on just so you don't have that little ringing every single time you get flashbanged or concussed. And then hit marker preset, I normally recommend people turning this off and putting it on none, just so you can hear footsteps when you're shooting. But that being said, playing multiplayer, I mean, shoot, we want to listen to those headshots. We want to listen to those hit markers. So I have mine set to default, but in the future, I will probably turn it off. Interface settings are usually my favorite settings, but there's a lot that they forgot to put in. We're just going to have to wait for the full release of Black Ops 7. But as we scroll down, telemetry, I do recommend, having this set on for at least your FPS and server latency. Now, in my readability section, I don't have subtitles on for multiplayer, but I really want to focus on this color customization just because this gives you a nice little boost with the colors in the game. Specifically, scrolling down to color filter 2, I recommend putting on filter 2, set to both, and then 100, 100. Everyone's eyes are different, so I do recommend changing these so these colors pop even more. Specifically, know the difference between the hard point being neutral, contested, and then the enemy and your team. Definitely focus on these 4 colors. You and your party really don't matter that much, but those 4 are the big ones. Hopping over to the gameplay HUD, in the HUD visibility, you could turn off a lot of settings, such as the health bars. A lot of people don't like the health bars in this game, so here's your option to turn them off. And that also goes for my zombie players. If you guys don't like the health bar or the damage numbers, you now have an option to turn those off. But let's quickly look at the HUD bounds. Now, these HUD bounds, I highly recommend grabbing these arrows and bringing them towards the center of your screen as close as possible. The reason why is because this brings your minimap in the top left closer to the center of your screen, so it's easier to get that info and make a play off of it. For the radar, definitely keep this turned off, because if you have it set to on, you lose all of those little details on your minimap, which really affect the game. So having this set to off, you see those little details, corridors, doors, windows, and it helps you gather information better. You can keep everything else on. Me personally, I also like the compass being on, just because if you line up the middle of the compass with a red dot, that is you literally looking at the enemy through the wall. So that really helps you just center better. And then we get into some crosshair settings where a lot of people recommend having your crosshair dot set to static, which means it is constantly on your screen, even if you don't have a weapon out. Me personally, I don't like that. I know to just trust that the center of my screen is where I need to shoot. I think hit marker visuals are very important, just so you can call out how many players are one shot or not. We are now in the most important settings, the controller settings, which I will go over each individual setting on what they do, just to really give you an understanding, starting off with the button layout. I will highly recommend that if you guys have paddles, you can play on default or tactical, but if you don't have paddles to jump or slide, then I would recommend playing on either stick and move or bumper jumper tactical. That being said, I do have buttons on the back of my controller, so I do play on default or tactical flip. The reason why I play tactical is just because I grew up the entire time sliding with my right thumbstick, and I basically stick to that. Now, the reason why it says flipped is just because down here, I swap L1, R1 with L2 and R2. I just prefer using L1 and R1 to shoot. My thumb rests better on the thumbstick too. And overall, I just feel more confident and comfortable using it. That being said, at the end of the day, controller settings are all about preference and what works best for you. So please feel free to take reference with these settings and change them to what works best for you. Such as for the stick sensitivities, I do prefer playing on 1.65. In fact, a lot of pro CDL players play anywhere between 1.6 and 1.8, but I have seen several players, win money playing on 1.4. FIFA Kill from World Series of Warzone just got done winning over, I believe, $200,000 himself. He plays on 1.3 stick sensitivity. At the end of the day, whatever helps you have the most control, be the most confident, comfortable, go with those stick sensitivities. As we scroll down, I recommend turning off controller vibration just so it doesn't mess with your shots. The trigger effect, I recommend turning those off. If you do have smart triggers, I recommend having those on, and then keep this trigger effect off. Other than that, if you don't have smart triggers and you want to try this trigger effect, feel free and try it out. Me personally, I don't like it. Now for these dead zone inputs on the left stick minimum, I recommend playing on 0 or 1. If you use your keyboard and mouse to, type, I do recommend 1 just so you don't have any issues. But a lot of players do play on 0 just because when they have stick drift on their left thumbstick, they basically have aim assist the entire time. Which, if you guys didn't know, your left stick gives you the strongest aim assist in the game, which is rotational aim assist. For the left stick max, it just allows you to strafe a little bit faster. All that means is when you push your left stick all the way left, you hit 100% of your strafe with only moving your left stick 75% of the way. Now with your right stick minimum, if you do have a brand new controller, you could play on 2 or 3, but eventually you'll get more stick drift and you may want to bump this up to 4, 5, maybe even 6. For your left trigger and right trigger, I recommend having it set to 0 or 1. Because I play on flipped, I tend to fat finger my R2 and L2 by accident. So I set this to 1 just so I don't throw a grenade mid-gunfight by accident. Now we go over to our aiming tab, where in sensitivity multiplier, I do bring down my ADS sensitivity multiplier down to 0.9. So what this means is every time you aim in, your sensitivity is even slower. This just helps you with finer aim control, especially in gunfights. I personally like it on 0.9, but like I said, everyone's different. You could just have it set to 1.0. Just every time you aim in and you look around, if you want that faster or slower, mess with the setting right here. Now for the focus, this is whenever you're holding your breath on a sniper rifle. So that's what this setting is for. And then everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Tablet is basically your big map. Air vehicles, ground vehicles, third person. Now, I personally don't mess around with the look inversion, but if you guys, prefer, using air vehicles where you pull down and that actually moves your vehicle up, you could change it to inverted. And I really want us to look at these aiming advanced settings because this is where a lot of preference comes into play, such as the ADS sensitivity transition timing. This is definitely going to be your preference. For me, I play on instant. The reason why is because every time I press L1, even if I'm not fully aimed into my gun, I instantly go down to a 0.9 ADS sensitivity multiplier, so my aim slows down even more. I personally like this. This helps me have finer aim control, but that being said, other people, they prefer having that lower sensitivity after the zoom. Some people, they prefer it to be gradual. Now, as we scroll down, the aim response curve type dynamic right here, it is broken. It allows so many players to just control recoil, shoot. I highly recommend playing on dynamic with aim response curve slope set to 1. Now, I used to use custom sensitivity per zoom when I played Warzone pretty heavily, and the reason why is because you'd have different scopes, right? Such as a 6 to 7 times scope, that'd be your sniper rifle, 2 to 3 times scope, that'd probably be your AR, and then your low zoom would be your SMG. And every time I aim in for some of those, I prefer it being faster than others, such as my low zoom, I had that set to 0.9, but my 4 to 5 times scope, I really like that set to 1.0. And then my sniper zooms, like 6, 7. Of course, the most 2 broken settings in the game, keep these on for all my controller players, MNK players, I'm sorry. Now this setting right here, there's a lot of tinfoil hat videos talking about this where they say you should go to your motion sensor advanced settings and turn off FOV sensitivity scaling. I don't see how that affects anything if you already have this set to off. This sets us over to our movement tab. Now, I highly recommend everyone to be playing on either on or tactical sprint assist. I do recommend playing on just so every time you want to move left, right, forward, you're already running. And again, this is another tip that allows players to strafe even faster left and right. But that being said, me personally, I do prefer knowing when I sprint or not, so I have it set to off. Mantle assist, I recommend everyone keep this off. I hate mantling and not being able to shoot, especially mid gunfight. Crouch assist, definitely keep this off because if you run past a vent or something, your character may just slide by accident, causing you to miss some shots. Corner slice really is preference at the end of the day. I personally like it. It just gives me more dopamine. But if you prefer the older Call of Duty feel, go ahead and turn it off. Now for this wall jump assist, I have 2 recommendations. The first one would just be play with it off, learn how to wall jump on your own, just so, when you go to do 3 wall jumps in a row, maybe on the second wall jump, you actually don't want to wall jump and that, jukes out the enemy and it makes them miss bullets. That being said, if you guys do play with wall jumps on, you are going to be flying through the map like it's a Gears of War game. Honestly, it's just there for fun. I don't think it gives a competitive advantage in any way. In fact, I do think it would hurt you because every time you jump, you're gonna be snapping to a wall and jumping off of it. Now, this activate roll assist is very interesting. I highly recommend having this assist set to partial just because when you jump off of a building, if that fall would kill you, now your character is going to roll and it's not going to kill you. Now with slide/dive behavior, I got used to this back in MW3, so I still play on it. But if you guys prefer just sliding and wall bouncing, then I highly recommend just playing on tap to slide. Of course, have your activation delay set to short. And as we're scrolling down, this automatic airborne mantle, if this is locked, you can go down to movement advanced settings and then turn on grounded mantle. This will then allow you to go to your automatic airborne mantle and set it to off or partial. I highly recommend setting it to off. And then when you go back to movement advanced settings, you definitely want grounded mantle off. And while we're in here, I do also recommend your tactical sprint activation to be on single tap run, just so when you click run, you are fully running. But with a lot of pro players, they tend to play on double tap just because that's kind of their rule. Going through the settings that we missed, the sprint restore and slide maintain sprint, have these both set to on, just so your flow throughout the map is consistent. Wingsuit activation, again, I prefer having full control, so I have it set to manual. The wall jump activation, I really love this because you can just press the jump on when and when you don't want to wall jump, but they do make it easier where you could just hold X when you want to wall jump. And let's say right before your third jump, you actually don't want to do the third jump. You just let go of X. This makes it a lot more simpler for a lot of people. Me personally, I do prefer pressing the button. With this slide/active roll behavior, just keep it set to tap the slide. The whole point is when you jump off of a roof or high ground, when you click your slide button, you will slide when you land, unless you have your active roll assist set to partial, which again, if you're about to die based on the height you jumped off of, your character will roll just to keep you alive. Which takes us to the next setting, active roll camera. 100% keep this on first person movement. The reason why you want to keep this on first person is just so you keep your centering on the target, so when you're done rolling, you can now continue shooting the enemy. If you go to third person, that's just going to mess up your centering, it's going to mess up your aim, and you're more than likely going to lose the gunfight. Let's scroll over to the combat tab now. Over here in this combat tab, the only things that I really changed is the armor plate behavior. I have it set to apply 1 because I prefer holding my triangle button to put on plates. And when I don't want to put on plates, I just let go. My C4 detonation, if I throw one C4, I do want to blow it up. I don't want to just throw it and have to throw the rest of them just to blow them up. Manual fire behavior, I highly recommend keeping this on press, just so when you do have a pistol or a semi-automatic, you can spam shoot the gun, and that is much faster rather than just holding. And as we enter the combat advanced settings, the only thing I changed in here was the weapon mount exit is instant, just so the second I want to leave, I'm gone. And then the interact/reload behavior is set to tap to interact. Now, this is my preference, but whenever I want to open a door, pick up a weapon, open a box, go up a zip line, all I have to do is press square once and it does it, compared to just holding it. Mantle and sprint cancels reload I have set to off, just so when I deliberately go to reload, if I go to, mantle something or sprint, it doesn't cancel it, and I get that reload finished. Akimbo behavior, you could set this to paired, which I would recommend, but I just love old Call of Duty, so I have it set to independent, so I can use L1 and R1 to shoot. And the last settings will be these overlay advanced settings, which all I did was I just changed the delay set to short, just so my pings go off even faster. Now for my mouse and keyboard players, unfortunately, I don't play mouse and keyboard anymore, so I would recommend you to do your own research and find another YouTuber to watch. Me personally, I do love watching Iceman Isaac for his settings and mouse and keyboard settings, so I'd recommend him. That being said though, me personally, I play on 1000 DPI. My mouse sensitivity I set down to 5. And scrolling down to mouse advanced settings, me personally, I do have my transition timing set to instant. My ADS sensitivity type is set to legacy. The reason why is just because, again, I really like my aim slowing down every single time I aim in. So this helps me a ton with that. Mouse calibration, I don't use any of these. I've been told not to use any of these, but a lot of people, again, have gone through these, like a 1.0 mouse acceleration, with 1 mouse filtering and smoothing on. Definitely out of my expertise. Another controller setting I would highly recommend is this change stance slide/dive. I would recommend putting this either on your left shift or left control button. The reason why is because you could have prone, dive, change stance, and crouch all set to control. And basically the whole point is it allows you to use one button to do all of your major movements, such as sliding, drop shotting, dolphin diving, and of course, laying down. If you went through the controller settings, these are the exact same settings that I recommended, such as sprint assist. I do recommend playing on or tactical sprint assist, just so you give your pinky a break from running. I do highly recommend making sure you put your activate roll assist set to partial. Again, just so when you jump off a building and you're about to die, your character will roll and you won't die. And in this movement advanced settings, this is where you can go into your slide/dive activation and also set it to share or not. Now on your console settings, I highly recommend going to your screen and video and making sure you have VRR set to enabled, 120 Hz set to automatic, ALLM set to automatic, video transfer rate set to automatic, and then as we scroll down, we have our HDR. Now again, me personally, playing on a 4K monitor, I am not used to the HDR, so usually I have this set to off. But if you do have it set to on, I highly recommend adjusting it and finding the best balance for yourself. I did configure my monitor to my preference, so I do have HDR enabled on the game. I also have 120 Hz enabled. And then for your eco mode preset, I recommend turning this off just because, decreases your console's energy consumption. I need you to work. I need you to be at a consistent 120. I'm talking to my PS5 right now. So I recommend having this off. And as we scroll over to the quality tab, motion blur, weapon motion blur, depth of field, definitely have these all turned off. Your Fidelity FX cast, I recommend having that set to on with 100. On-demand texture streaming will be optimized with small and download limits set to off. And then we scroll over to our view tab. And in our view tab, once again, I'm running the exact same settings. 110 field of view, my weapon field of view is set to wide, ADS field of view is set to affected, and then your first person camera movement should always be on 50%. Very important. Now, this is just the beta, so we are missing a few settings, such as the HUD display settings on playing either standard, inverted, or classic, but I'm sure we're gonna get these settings when the game fully releases. That being said, when the game does fully release, I will have a updated settings video, going even more in depth, going over NVIDIA global settings, and of course, going over the in-game file settings. But until then, I hope you guys enjoy Black Ops 7. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help. And if you're also interested in professional coaching, check it out in the description below. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy the beta this weekend, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you, and peace.